You are tuned in to The T-Side, a podcast where we talk total health, life lessons, and music. I'm your host, licensed therapist, doula, and music enthusiast, Tanya D. Now let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of the T-Side podcast with me, your host, Tanya D. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the episode. And if you are returning, welcome back. Today, I have a very special guest with me. This young man reached out to me to talk about his book, The Black Traveler's Guide to Daegu. He lives in South Korea. He used to live in Daegu. He's moved, so I'll let him tell you a little bit about that. His name is Phil. And Phil, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you got to Korea?
Sure. So I got by the Blerd Explorer from South Carolina. So it was back in my last semester of college around fall 2015. And like all seniors do, you send out resumes, trying to find an interview, can't land nothing. And then one day I'm on university job board. I saw the ad about teaching English in South Korea. So I decided to give it a shot, and I've been here ever since. I've been here since May 2016.
Okay. And before we get into the book, because I got a lot of questions.
Sure.
How are you doing? How have things been there? And how are things now with the new strain of COVID?
It's been crazy, but I'm doing a lot better. Now I started a new job back in March, and it's in the countryside away from the big city in South Korea, like Seoul, the capital. So it's not as stressed out as much. It will be if I stayed in the capital area.
Okay. Like I said, I've got a lot of questions, but
sure.
First I want to know, how did it take you a while to get acclimated? And do you speak Korean? Or is it was that something you learned in school?
Well, no, me personally, I don't speak Korean. I need to start studying. Like I've been telling myself this, but I'm so lazy. No, I never learned Korean. I'm just trying to learn how to read Korean. Now, learning how to read Korean is easier. Mm-hmm. Just trying to speak it is more difficult.
Okay.
Now, of course, like anybody, like when you go live from one country, then you go from your home country to live in another country, it takes a lot of time to get used to it. Especially when you go from a homogenous nation where everybody looks the same. Especially when it comes to Asia, like everybody's tend to be more light on the lighter skin tone. Mm-hmm. So of course, me with my dark skin, my height, I'd stand out hard than anybody else. So it takes a while to get used to.
Okay. I read a lot of stuff in the book, but just for my listeners, let me go back. Where is Korea? Because I have a lot of friends who do travel. So we like to explore different places. So where in the world is Korea?
Yeah, so Korea is located in the Korean Peninsula. If you look where China is, you can look on the east side of China, and then you'll see a little, I guess just kind of like a tail end of it, and where it's like where North Korea, South Korea is. They also, or you can look from Japan, and if you go to the bottom left part of Japan, it has straight left. Go left, then you'll find Korea.
Okay.
Because you guys can take a ferry or an hour, 40-minute plane ride from Busan, South Korea, to Japan. From, to Fukuoka.
To where?
To Fukuoka, Japan.
Okay. As I said, I told you before, the book is a very easy read and it's laid out very well. I really loved all the colorful pictures. It's a really beautiful city, country. I was actually surprised at how beautiful it is because I love scenery and all of the mountainsides and grasslands. And you talked about people hiking a lot. So it's just a really beautiful place. And even if you're not a Black person, the book is very helpful if you decide to travel to Korea, just because it covers everything from travel requirements to get to Korea, places to visit. It even has pictures on the menus and recommended places to go, as well as helpful phone numbers, which was really cool. I actually downloaded the original book, Black Traveler's Guide to, is it Inchan?
Inchan, yeah.
Okay. And I didn't read all of it, but this one has stories from other Black people who live in Daegu and their experiences. So,
right.
Yeah. And like I said, so you actually have a series called the Black Traveler's Guide series. And so
probably might end up becoming a series. I don't know.
It's a series. We'll claim it. So
yeah.
What made you write a book, and more specifically, a traveler's guide book?
Really is more of when you look at the travel space, right? We look at YouTube, TV shows, Instagram. Most of the travel content creators are usually from a white perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And usually, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good content creators too out there who I follow and I enjoy. But the problem is, at least when it comes to African Americans, we don't really travel as much. Let me ask you this before I continue. Now, you personally growing up, do you know any Black people that traveled or lived abroad that wasn't military?
Growing up, no. Now, yes. But growing up, no. I'm in St. Louis, and the furthest I went was south to visit family. Right. Mississippi, Arkansas, Memphis, down that way.
Right.
So we didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, I think other African Americans probably feel in the same boat too. And fun fact, almost every Black podcast I talked to asked about this. Most of them said no, had the same answer. It was mostly because maybe, like I said, the family trip down south, but that's about it. But other than that, the only time they knew somebody who'd done traveling was usually because they were military, more often than not. And for me, I saw the demand for this type of content, especially like during the late 2000s. You've seen a lot more Black travel content creators, like YouTubers, like Instagram pages and stuff like that, Facebook travel groups, which is great. That's awesome. And also, it was more of, I decided to start complaining and wishing and hoping, like, why can't some big company make a Black travel guide for Black people? It's more like, I'll just do my damn self. Nobody else is going to do it.
Very true. Very true. And it's more authentic.
Yeah. It's one of those scenarios where it's like, we just got to say, you know what? I'll just get out of my way. I'll just do my damn self. Move. Instead of, complaining about it. It's like, why not do something about it? And these two books, Inchan and Daegu, is more kind of like a test drive to see if people like this type of content.
Okay.
And so far, there's been positive feedback. I wish to translate more into sales, of course, but again, just more as long as people know about it and seeing that people enjoy it. Even also both from Black readers, who are my main demographic, and also from non-Black readers too. I heard from both of them too.
Okay.
Like I said, people seem like they like how it's easy to read, and it makes you feel that anybody can read up and use it in the future.
Yeah, it was so easy to read, and I think part of the, like I said, is really colorful, but that's because of the things in the city, like I don't know what those are, chicken statue, whatever those things are. Those like it was somebody. They had the little birds they were dabbing. I don't know, like in the city. So, but they're all really colorful. It was just really cool. So, like I said, the book lays out everything, but for my listeners, can you tell us what is the weather like there? Or do they experience all the seasons?
So Korea experienced all the seasons. It does get cold, particularly if you're going to the northern part of Korea, like Seoul and whatnot. You definitely feel the cold. Like when I was living in Incheon, area I was, they had this lake that froze over, like during winter. During the winter of this year too. And Daegu, while nice, it's also notorious being one. Now Korea gets very humid in the summer, so it has that southern heat, that southern humidity. So, but Daegu is a lot worse because it's nowhere near the coast, so you're surrounded by mountains. So basically, all that heat is kind of trapped inside the city.
Okay.
So I do put the precaution in the book, like when it comes to hiking, like if you want to go hiking Daegu, I say go for it. But if you're coming in the summertime, you're gonna must take massive precautions so you don't get the heat stroke.
Oh, okay. So does that give you a feel of home of the South Carolina heat?
Yeah, it does. And of course, it causes my electricity bill to go up too because of the AC.
That was another question I have. What is the cost of living there?
So cost of living in general can be, it's a little bit cheaper, but of course, depends on what city you go to. Obviously, if you stay in the capital, bigger cities, it's going to cost more.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I kind of focus on more Incheon and Daegu instead of the capital big cities, because one, I wanted to stand out a little bit more with these books, and two, Seoul and Busan, the second largest city, they're already oversaturated, particularly Seoul, because everybody is written about Seoul to death. So I feel like there's no challenge, there's no thrill to it if I'm writing about something that everyone's been talked about to death. Everybody's done it, so there's no point.
Right.
So I figure, let me go ahead and write about these other cities that nobody really talked about. I mean, Daegu and Incheon, they do get talked about, but it's not the first city people think of when they think of South Korea. So
no, I have never heard of Daegu.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I'm a little bit biased because I used to live in Daegu from 2018 to 2019 for a year. And it was one of my favorite cities I lived in South Korea.
Okay. And so, just for people who are traveling, what is the currency? What is it called, first of all? And what is the exchange rate?
So it's called the South Korean won, WON, won. And usually, if you get for $1, you get maybe just depending on the day, of course, because exchange rates vary between the days. Mostly, you'll see about $1.30. I will say. Sometimes, like most currencies, sometimes one currency can be stronger than the other, depending on the day, of course. But you'll still be fine. Now, I do note in the book, like when it comes to buying goods, daily goods, food, whatnot, you should be fine. But electronics tend to be a lot more expensive in Korea than it is over in America.
Really?
Yeah.
As expensive as they are here.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about trying to go buy a Samsung smartphone or LG, you're going to pay a lot more money here than you would back in the U.S.
Interesting. What is the cost of living? Is it easier in the smaller city where you are and more expensive like everywhere else in Seoul?
No, it's definitely, honestly, the more further you go away from the bigger cities, the more cost of living tends to get a little bit cheaper. Like me, for example, this year I moved from Incheon to a small country town called Uljin on the East Coast. And
now, how do you spell that?
I guess Uljin.
Okay.
Uljin, yeah. And it's definitely a lot more cheaper because, again, it's a country town. And also, I noticed my utility bill seems to be a lot more cheaper because it's been powered by pretty much the energy comes from the nuclear power plant they have in this town too.
Oh, okay.
So now most of the power in South Korea comes from coal. Now they have try to add more green energy, wind turbines and solar panels, and they're trying to steer away from coal, but it's still there. So I noticed compared, like usually, especially in wintertime, obviously it gets a lot more expensive. So because people trying to add more heat energy, but yeah.
Okay. And so, what is the housing situation like? Because I know it's very crowded in Korea and China, and I guess more so in Asian countries. They're more populated.
Well, yeah, yes and no. Mostly, again, that's usually the largest, especially Seoul, because that's 25 million people live there in Seoul.
Oh, wow.
So it does. You can still feel the crowdedness, and so, of course, in exchange, you get bad air pollution, so you can see that too. Daegu is not so bad, especially when you go more out from the bigger city, from the metro downtown area to, which leads to a more rural side of Daegu, I guess you could say. So it's not so bad. Apartment-wise, they have a weird rental system. Like usually, say for I don't know, we'll say like a 2-bedroom apartment, like deposit. We'll say what costs, how much is the deposit, like on average for a single person, we'll say. In St. Louis.
I don't know because I've been in my house for 15 years. So
there we go. Yeah, that's not gonna help.
Yeah, I don't know. But I know an apartment, a very, very cheap one, will cost probably about $700. So
yeah, usually they have this weird system where like called Johnson. So basically you pay, because usually most places like for an apartment, you'll pay like what? 1,000, 2,000 maybe for a deposit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is for one person, right? And usually the deposit could be like that. We'll say about in US dollars, we'll say like close to like $3,000 to $8,000.
Mm.
So it's like
Wow.
buying a house in a sense, or a
Yeah.
condo.
Sounds like it. Okay.
But of course, the more you pay into the deposit, the less you pay in rent.
Okay. Interesting. Now,
It's a weird system, but now foreigners, we can get our own apartments if we want to, but
mm-hmm.
it's just a complicated process, and you also got to find a landlord who doesn't mind renting to foreigners. So that's usually a bigger challenge.
Really? Okay. And so you post a lot of reels and things like that.
Mm.
And even in the book, you talk about taxis and trains and buses. So, what is the preferred mode of transportation? Is it generally public transportation?
Public transportation. Korea's a small country too, so
Mm-hmm.
getting around it's really not difficult, really.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, some people do buy their own cars, of course, like anybody else, like everybody else in the world. But of course, like when you live in a big city, when you live in a big city like say New York, right? You rather just take the train because it's easier and much
Mm-hmm.
cheaper to have a car.
Okay. Let me see. What else do I have? Now, here's the sticking point for me:
Yeah,
the food.
yeah,
Honestly, it's just more so because I don't like trying new foods,
mm,
but you even have pictures of food in the book, and they actually are
yeah,
really colorful too. They look really good. But along with the menus and tell you what to get, and you tell how to order, and
mm,
you talk about the allergies. So is there a lot of seafood? I think you talked about nuts,
yeah.
like because they use sesame seed oil and things like
Mm.
that, and seafood.
Yeah. So, and not just in South Korea, but a lot of Asian countries.
Right.
One thing you'll know in the many Asian countries, they use seeds, nuts, tree nuts, definitely seafood too. Korea's no different, and a lot of soups. Some do use like seafood stock. They use like shellfish in the soups. Like so, one thing I do know, like if you do have food allergies, you will struggle, especially when it comes to like tree nuts, seeds,
Mhm.
and seafood too. Uh, it just always that's how they use, that's how they ferment their food, how they cook the dishes. So it's not something you can if you have a food allergy, like even if you have like one of those allergy cards that you can buy
Mhm.
online, right? That's translated. Even if you do that, I wouldn't risk it because again, there's a high chance of cross contamination.
Yeah, and I know you talked about in the book that they don't have a lot of allergies, so
Yeah,
that's not something that's really important to them.
yeah, it's
So,
not. I mean, it's common. Like for me, for example, recently, this year in 2021, I was doing a talk about a lesson of food, right? And I was asking my kids, "Hey, I'm gonna bring something because we on fifth grade class, because we're talking about expressing how food tastes, like sweet, salty, spicy, right?"
mhm.
And and to be cautious, they said, "Hey," I asked them, "Who has food allergies?" And only like 5 out of 60 of my students have food allergies.
Oh,
It's
wow.
just not common. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's so. And I remember there's one foreign girl, a sister, a black girl, who came up to the school temporarily to work at the summer camp thing they were doing. And I noticed she was kind of being picky about what she eating. I'm like, and I asked her, did she have any food allergies? She said, yeah, like tree nuts and seeds. So there's
Oh,
some things
wow.
she just couldn't eat. Now
Yeah.
it is possible. It's possible to travel to Asia if you have food allergies, but your food options will be very limited to either McDonald's or uh, Airbnb cooking. That's about it.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'd be okay with that. Although I don't really eat McDonald's, but
Yeah,
I'm
but I mean,
familiar with
you can
that.
try McDonald's in another country, right? Not they have different menus.
Right. Although I have found that food in other countries, even though it's the same, it tastes
Yeah,
different. So, yeah, but because I'm older, I
right.
remember a time when people didn't have allergies.
Yeah,
Everybody had peanut butter and celery as a snack,
yeah, yeah.
whether you liked it or not, you had it, and now all of a sudden all these kids are allergic to peanuts. I'm like, man, so you can't even take snacks to school. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so clearly it's something in the food and what they're
Yeah,
doing.
it gives all the. It's really for especially in the West, like because how we put all those processed and chemicals in the food. That's
Mm-hmm.
what causing a lot more. That's why you see a lot more kids coming with these food allergies. Like you said, growing up with me, like I barely heard of any kids go. I'm a '90s kid, like 1991. So I barely heard of anyone having food allergies growing up. That's what part of my recollection. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. You see more and more people having food allergies. It's like it shows you that American food, like they're trying to kill us, really.
Right. So let me ask you a little bit about
Sure.
your students. What is the school and the education system like? You said you teach English as a second language, but you
Yep.
said you have, like you posted today, you all made ice cream. So are you teaching a lot of different subjects and you're just teaching in English, or do you have specific segment that you talk
Excuse me.
about that?
Excuse me. No, I'm primarily focused on ESL, English as a second language. That's what I'm here for.
Okay.
And the reason I did so we're pretty much at the end of our spring semester, spring 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know how you do in most schools. You just on the last few days of school, you don't do anything.
Gotcha.
And so for a while, I promised them to have like we're gonna do a little ice cream pour as a reward to pay. I kind of made like a team battle game like to the class to see, okay, if this class gets the most points, I keep bringing more ice cream than the other classes. But
Okay.
unfortunately, because of what's happening in the world right now, and and a change of time, like last minute changes, I couldn't do what I wanted to do originally. So I
Okay.
kind of keep it short. And I wanted to bring all the kids together, but couldn't risk it. So
Mm-hmm. So are they all fifth graders? Do you teach fifth
yeah.
grade?
So I teach at an elementary school in Ilgen. So I teach both from third grade to fifth grade.
Okay. And so is that a required subject if in school,
Yeah,
English?
yeah. So for public schools, yes, it is required for students to learn to have English classes. Private schools, your traditional private schools, maybe I'm not sure about them how they work.
Okay.
And also in Korea, particularly, most students learn English from a young age. They go to kindergarten, daycare, and then afterwards they'll probably go to after school English academies.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the family, of course, because not often because English academy at school like those they cost a lot of money.
Okay.
So now everybody can afford to go to take the kids there.
Okay. So now let me just switch it and just talk about you being a black man in Korea. Like you said, you're tall, you're 6'7".
Yep.
I think I don't know if you said it on here, but I know it's in the book. So
Yes, sir.
a very tall black man in Korea.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you stand out. So how has it been, not just getting acclimated, but have you noticed a lot of racism or different things like that?
Yes. So for those who know, okay, so context for the listeners. So when I was going, so it's no secret really when it comes to ESL in Asia, particularly like in China, especially in China and Korea. There's definitely gonna be more of a preference for a white teacher. So it's because for some reason they think, fortunately in Korea, they do believe heavily in stereotypes about everyone, everybody, all the cultures. So when you think, so when you think of black people, they automatically think a black person is either a rapper or basketball player, something like that. Despite even if the black person is not from America, but they're from like Africa or the Caribbean. And then, in terms of teaching, like when it comes to finding an English teaching job, there's still going to be that preference of trying to get a white girl, especially a white girl from America or Canada, because that's what people think when it comes to English, right? And yeah.
Man.
And now, true story. I remember back in 2019, summer 2019, my contract's come to a close, and I was trying to find another job. And one of my recruiter I was working with, he just straight up told me, hey man, I'm having a hard time finding you a spot because most of the schools I sent my resume to, he told me that they don't want to hire. They want to hire a white person for a teacher.
Hmm.
I mean, my feelings weren't hurt, but it's like, okay, at least you told me. At least you're honest.
Very true, but that's crazy that here we face, it's been built up that white people are superior, and even there, they think white people are superior.
Not so much. I mean, there's still like the
they have. That's who they prefer, though.
Yeah, at least in Asia. Now Asia is pretty homogenous, so xenophobia. So white people face discrimination for the first time and start complaining on Facebook and stuff. No, I remember a true story. This happened this year too. I think around March. The Seoul capital region, there was an outbreak. I think at a factory of a bunch of foreigners, and so the government acquired all the all expats, all foreigners in the region in the area to go get tested, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, all the foreigners, particularly white people, started complaining, "Oh, this is xenophobia, this is discrimination," and all the black people were joking, like, "Oh, this is your first time, right?"
Right.
Yeah. So now some of them, for some of them, they come to Korea thinking, "Oh, it's gonna be a magical adventure," but then when they face xenophobia, it's like, "Oh my god, I've been discriminated against. This is not right." It's like, yeah, what do you think we've been? And of course, all of us, you and me, and every black, brown person was like, "Yeah, no shit, right?
Right,
sucks, right?" But no, now going back to the story about the outbreak, so the Korean government had the foreigners go get tested standing in line. Now, which I totally understand why they did it, but at the same time, the problem was it was so last minute, and there were like a very few locations where people could go get tested. So as you can imagine, there's a massive long lines, wait times too.
Okay.
So of course, people were concerned, understandably, because there's a high chance somebody has COVID. You can catch COVID from that line.
Good point.
Now, I mentioned in both books that when it comes to traveling in Asia, all foreigners get stared at. Everybody, even white people, get stared at. But those with a dark complexion or unique haircuts, usually for black people, for instance, we're going to get more looks than a white person ever does.
That was another question I had. Are there a lot of different races and ethnicities there? Like here, you see, there are a lot of Asian people, Hispanic cultures, and things like that. So what about there?
I mean, you see them, but it's not as big. I would say, like, as America, we're not so diverse. Korea's homogenous. Everybody looks the same. So it's like 93% of the population is all ethnically Korean.
Okay.
You do see other backgrounds, but usually, again, they usually stay in the capital city, in the Seoul and Busan, some Daegu. But again, it's mostly in the larger cities where you'll see them.
Okay.
Not just, your typical Americans, Canadians, British, UK folk. You also got some people from Central Asia, Uzbekistan's. You got some African people too as well. But again, they typically prefer to stay in Seoul.
Okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense because again, most people have heard of those places.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I watch a lot of TV and movies, although I have not seen this one yet. It's on my list. The Last Train to Busan. I had no idea where Busan was. I'm like, oh, okay. And it's in Korea.
Oh, you've seen it.
A really good movie, though.
I'm sure you've seen it. If you saw Black Panther, they were in Busan. So you saw the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The Korean scene that was in Busan.
Okay. Like I said, you had stories from other people, other Black people, and their experience. Were these people you knew, or you just happened to come across them and was like, hey, let me interview you for my book?
Most of them I knew. Others I reached out into, like, for the Black expat group, Hey, Having to Korea on Facebook.
Okay.
So I asked around, hey, I need some volunteers if you want to tell your story. And the reason I decided to do that was I wanted to show readers that, yes, some people, as you probably noticed, they had like similar experiences. Others are going to be a little bit different. But I want to show that other different groups of different Black people who live in Korea throughout, not specifically live in Daegu, but just live in other countries, right? Other parts of the country. and let them tell their story, let them see what they go through. Because I
Okay.
felt like, okay, my stories, yeah, they're fun and all, they're fine, but again, I think it's best to have some, like say, a sister from New York maybe tell the story, or a black man from the UK tell the story too.
Right.
And one of my good friends, Brandon, who did the translation work in the book too,
Mm-hmm.
he did the Q&A section too, and he lived in Daegu too at the time.
Yeah, it was very interesting to hear or rather read their stories. And I don't remember the whole situation, but somebody said that they got yelled at, but I don't know what they said because it was in Korean. You actually wrote that
Right.
part, what they said in Korean. I was like, okay, I don't know what he said, but
Yeah.
apparently it wasn't very nice, whatever it was. So, yeah, that was really interesting just to hear their perspectives. But at the very end, you give some tips on traveling. And I've watched just because I'm curious like that.
Uh,
And I always want to know something. I've watched on YouTube places you can go or how to act when you go to these countries, some do's and don'ts. But
yeah.
it was a couple of them that were really interesting. And it was kind of funny, but not at the same time. You said
Uh,
never use red ink to write a name. Red ink is used to write a dead person's name at a funeral. And your students screamed at you for writing their names with a red marker.
Yeah, it was by accident. When I was doing I think it was like a roll call thing. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, interesting. Red is specifically for dead people and
Yeah.
don't write in red ink. And generally in school, teachers here, they'll mark your paper in red if it's
Yeah.
wrong or, different things like that. But the one you said it was be careful if anyone from a religious organization comes up to you, they are most likely part of a cult and will
Yeah.
try to recruit you. I'm like, oh my, okay.
Yeah, Korea has definitely a major cult problem.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and some of them are tend to be quote unquote Christians, but the problem is, uh, some of them can be so large that like a small church can be part of a network of a larger cult.
Wow.
And in some cases, everyone knows. I think there was a Vice agent who talked about this. There was a video about this too. They recently came out. I gotta look at the name up. But yeah, and some cases they'll go undercover, like they'll try to infiltrate other churches to recruit other people from said church to bring them to their cult.
Oh my.
Yeah,
That's scary. Okay.
exactly. So
And so how did you find that out? Was that something that you learned firsthand or you just heard
it
about?
was years later when I heard about it, and then maybe watched videos on YouTube stuff. But yeah, it's like, so I was like, yeah, no, I'm stay away from churches. Like, even if it's just nothing crazy, nothing serious happening, I'm just not gonna touch it.
Mhm. Oh wow. Okay. And you had a lot of different ones talking about um touching people and when you hand somebody something you use both hands as a sign of respect, but
Yeah,
in general don't touch people, like don't put your hand on somebody's shoulder,
yeah,
different
yeah,
things like that. So like interesting. Okay.
yeah. I would say one thing when it comes to travel, I say this: different house, different rules. That's what I
Mhm.
say. Like this: when you go traveling, like leave all the American pride bullshit there at the gate, man. It's just not worth it because again, you think yes, doesn't matter who you are because you're American. Nah, you don't get no pass. Like if you act like a fool, you're gonna get a lot of trouble. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I saw
we may
that.
not yeah, we may not understand the culture, we may not understand the traditions and norms, but again, that's how they do things. They're not gonna
Mhm.
change it. So go with the flow. Just do what you told. Just don't cause any trouble. You'll be fine.
Yeah, because you said that the laws are designed to protect Korean citizens. So
Yeah.
even if the Korean was at fault
Yep.
and there were multiple eyewitnesses, you will
Yep.
lose and most likely face charges. So,
Yes, it has happened. Like, even in cases where like a Korean man, I read a story about. I remember this. I think about a year or two ago about a story. A white guy, he was shopping, I guess, at a grocery store with his wife, Korean wife, and some Korean man just started yelling and assaulting him and whatnot, despite witnesses saying. And in some cases, stories like those, I think he got off on the foreigner, the white guy got off okay, I think. But in some cases, Koreans will pull that xenophobic bullshit and will side with the Korean, even if it's the Korean's fault. Like say when it comes to car accidents, traffic car accidents, they'll try to fall. Sometimes they'll side with the Korean, even though it was his fault because he was drinking and doing bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And even especially for women, you gotta be really careful. I'm not trying to be scary, but unfortunately, I've seen stories about Korean men assaulting and sometimes R-word Korean women, and they get like a slap on the wrist, like a few years.
You mean raping women?
Yeah,
sexually assaulting them.
Yeah.
In
some cases, most cases, they'll do like a few years, couple years in prison, and then they'll be back out.
Okay.
But yeah, so no, usually just agree. Now, I know most foreign women say they feel safer in Korea because they walk at home late at night. But again, you still want to use precaution.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and it was another one. You said that when you're on public transportation, and I don't know, I guess it's for the buses and trains, that you aren't supposed to sit on the colored seats because they're reserved for the elderly, pregnant women, and those with injuries or disabilities.
Right.
And I looked at one of the pictures and the seats were blue. So are they specially colored seats that you would know?
Usually, for example, like they'll put a sign behind the chair, or you'll see like an actual little legit colored seat, like odd color out one out type of seat.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so this is on the subways too now. So it won't be like a big like secret like and so you'll embarrass. You'll see the sign.
Okay, whether you can read it or not, you'll know that.
Yeah, there'll be a picture of a pregnant woman, elderly person, so you'll see the picture and also the words too. So
okay, and so now this is just for me because as you can see, I'm a curly girl.
Yeah.
Do they have products for Black people out there?
No, not in the stores. No. Now there are. I know there's one Black woman who has her own, I guess, Black hair store, like online retail store. So there's that. Okay. I'm not sure if she has an offline site, so maybe I'm not sure. But yeah, I wouldn't give you hopes. So like, if especially for curly hair color like you, just bring your own products.
Gotcha. Okay. And you were talking about shopping, buying clothes for you, and like the shirt you have on, it says, "Yeah, I'm tall." I don't know what the rest of it says.
It says, "Yeah, I'm tall. Thanks for letting me know."
Oh, but pretty much out there, it's hard for you to find clothes if you're not small and thin.
Yeah. It just in main Asian culture, it's all looking about, especially for women, looking slim and thin. Especially for men, you may see most people do, but it's not as common. So it's more like looking slim, like you're looking like you're thin.
Oh, okay.
So that's the deal. So again, if you don't fit that norm, just talking about it for the big folk, we're big and tall, some to height and or weight. Yeah, don't talking about going shopping. Like there are H&M. There's an H&M store in Daegu, around the country in Seoul. But again, it's just not with the hassle.
Yeah, because you said even you wear a size 13 shoe, and even in stores like Nike and things like that, you couldn't even find shoes.
Yeah, exactly. So I import my shoes from Amazon just to save me time. It's really not worth the hassle.
Okay. And because I'm into music, do they have a lot of festivals and concerts there pre-COVID?
Yeah, pre-COVID, yes. There'll be many festivals, music festivals, concerts. Speaking of Daegu, speaking of festivals, they do have the famous Daegu Chimney Festival, a fried chicken and beer music festival in Daegu. Usually happens around July, around this time, I believe. I went back in 2019. I went on the last day, and it was a week-long music festival. So you'd be able to get a lot of fried chicken, lots of Korean street foods and dishes, and you'll have a great time.
Okay. What do you do for fun before I let you go?
Downtime wise, usually I'll go exercise, cooking. I recently got cooking and baking. Thanks, COVID. Because of COVID. Need something to do. Reading, writing occasionally, taking pictures. I just got into live streaming too.
Okay.
On IG Live. And yeah, I usually play games too.
Okay. Yeah, you have been going live quite a bit. And it's cool because I get to travel without being able to travel because I love traveling. And that's been one of the hardest parts of COVID, not being able to travel or go to concerts.
Same.
It's been rough.
And I was going to do this big travel live stream in Daegu. I want to do it this weekend, but unfortunately, because of the case numbers are really too high right now, so it's just not too kind of risky at the moment too. You know.
Okay.
So for now, I'm just gonna lay low.
Okay.
So,
well, yes.
Of course, I mean, I'm doing a live stream this weekend, but I didn't look in my town right now. But I will announce the big one later day.
Okay, because I think I voted to see the zoo, just because I've read the book, so I've seen kind of the market area and things like that. I was like, I want to see what their zoo looks like.
Yeah, definitely will. I will do that, but for now, as I'm sure everyone can understand, COVID numbers a little too high over here, so I gotta lay low for a while.
Understandable. More important to be safe and healthy.
Exactly.
I know it's late where you are, so I won't keep you, but since I do have a theme song for every episode, and I let the guests pick the song. So what is your song for today?
I guess number one spot by Ludacris.
You know what? I like that choice because you did I don't know. I look at so much stuff. I don't know if you did a video and you were talking about your book. You said you coming for the number one spot with your book. I like it. I like that. So I do know you can get the book. You can download it. Is it in a hardcover version or is it just on Kindle?
Just an ebook only.
Yes. Okay. And it's $9.99. It's not expensive. And like I said, it has a lot of great information, a lot of pictures, and the pictures are labeled. So you really know what the spot is. So even if you're traveling, you can look up a particular place and it tells you, like I said, how to order food and all of that. So it's definitely a great read. I believe the Black Traveler's Guide to Incheon is $6.99.
Yes, that's right.
And so it's not expensive. You should definitely download it, check it out. So where can they find you? What are your socials?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at the Blerd Explorer, Blerd, BLERD_explore. Both books, Black Traveler's Guide to Incheon, Incheon, and Black Traveler's Guide to Daegu, Daegu. They're available on Amazon right now in ebook formats only.
Okay, and I'll put a link to the page or to the Amazon page in my description, so people can just go there and get the book if they choose to. Well, I'm not sure how you found me, but I appreciate you reaching out, and
I appreciate you doing this interview.
So we can help you get to the number one spot with your book.
Tell your friends, tell your family.
Yeah, with your book series, because like I said, I'm claiming it. So do you plan to travel to other places?
Yes, I definitely post-COVID, of course. I'm actually considering make the first country I go to. I'm just going to go ahead and write about making travel guide to that country. Or the city where I go to, when it's safe to travel, of course.
Okay. That'll be fun. Well, it's Friday for you, so you have a good weekend and you have a good night. Thank you for talking with us, and I will see you on Instagram.
All right. You have a good one now.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the T-Side Podcast. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at the T-Side Podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss any of the episodes. And be sure to tell a friend about the show. Until next time.